spend some time with you this afternoon. As many of you are aware, prior to my joining the National Register, I spent many years in commerce, in large companies, medium-sized companies, and the tail end of my commercial career, I was actually a management consultant, a partner in a boutique management consultancy, where we spent a lot of time with large corporations, small, medium-sized enterprises, and also spending time with sole traders and self-employed as to how best to run their businesses and how best to manage themselves for their own benefit as an operation which was earning money and spending money. So that's what we're wanting to spend a little bit of time on today. Now, the one thing that I'm very conscious of is that in the length of time that we have, we're only really going to skate across so many different topics, so many different challenges, so many different issues. One of the things that I'm really interested in is from you as to which of these topics are topics that you would like to return to. Which of these issues, which of these challenges that we're going to discuss are things which you would quite like to spend some more time on. And we'll come across some of these issues as we wander through the presentation. And if there's anything that you say, yes, I'd really like to spend more time on this, or yes, I'd really like to drill into this, then please let us know, because we can then organize a series of opportunities to dive in a little bit deeper to gain as much knowledge as we can to help us running our own operations. Now I'm going to start the slideshow, and we're going to work our way through this. Now, can you all see that? I'm taking it yes, because we're not getting any negative reactions. That's very good. So that's clear and on screen. You'll notice I've changed the title a little bit from managing your own business to managing my own business, because what's most important is for each and every one of us to ensure that we're getting the best that we possibly can out of all our efforts. And I'm making an assumption that the majority of people who've joined us today are indeed self-employed and sole traders. So every one of us needs support. Every one of us needs ways to optimize the activity that we're involved in, to ensure that the personal contribution that I put into my business is adding to my success. And so often for self-employed or for sole traders, it can be extremely difficult to actually find ways to gain knowledge from others, to find out from other people's experience. So that's why through today, I'd like you to think about everything from how I package myself, how I market myself, how I want myself to be perceived, how I actually use different channels of communication for my own benefit. So social media marketing, direct marketing, how I organize my own terms and conditions for me personally. What are the terms and conditions that are vital for me when I'm dealing either direct with a public service operator or via the agencies, which most of them outsource through? How then do I ensure that once I have actually delivered the work, my invoicing is tight and neat, it fits with the needs of and the demands of the agency or of the public sector organization, that I know how to chase the cash? Because invariably there'll be times where there are people that owe you money. I'll share a story with you. One particular client we worked with, that I personally worked with, in 2010, I didn't receive payment until 2017, 7 years later. But we never stopped chasing. So making sure that we don't give up on that which is owed to us and how best to do so. And how we should negotiate, how we should ensure that we negotiate effectively to protect ourselves. And through that process, really looking at how we manage our cash, how we manage our cash flow, how we think of ourselves in profit and loss, and also a sense of what a balance statement is all about, a balance sheet is all about, because many of you will be dealing with these privately owned agencies whose responsibility is to deliver cash to shareholders, to deliver dividends. So the more we understand how they operate, the more we can actually use that information to help drive ourselves. So today is about the revitalization of our business through what is massive change and massive uncertainty. And this is not the first time in history when we've had great change and great uncertainty. John F. Kennedy remembers a time when he became president that the law of life is actually very simple. Do not just look at the past. Actually, even when thinking about today, don't let that drive you totally for tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be different. My goodness, haven't we lived through that this year with all sorts of changes within our own language service ecosystem, but broader than that, changes across the whole globe, and indeed changes to the UK's relationship with the rest of Europe, with Brexit. So change is with us, and change is something that we have to recognize and begin to embrace. We cannot just look to the past and hang on to what may have been good in the past in the hope that it will return to that. Life's not going to be that way. Never has been. It ain't going to be like that. So in order to survive and to flourish, in order for my business to actually grow and to be able to look after me, we must constantly be looking at our business practices, finding ways in which we may want to change them, and being aware of external and indeed internal challenges to making those changes happen. And one of the ways of looking at this is by exploring environmental factors, just to make sure that we are right on top of the things that are occurring which are going to have an impact on me. Social threats. Well, we've got a massive social threat right now with a virus that's causing all sorts of chaos across our ecosystem. We cannot but change to take notice of the sort of issues that social threat to how we do our business, how we conduct ourselves, the sort of change that we have to make sure that we are on top of it. We might not like remote interpreting. We might not, but it's going to be with us for a long time. So make sure that we're aware of all the different sorts of social threats that might be out there that might be affecting me. Technological developments, my goodness, I'm 176 years old. At least I feel that way sometimes. And trying to keep on top of every single shift in technology to ensure that I am as adept as I can be, that I am fit for purpose to handle the technology, hugely important. I was having a conversation only earlier this week with the Met, London Met, and there's a lot of pressure on the Met and Language Services Unit there in terms of the technology that they're using, and therefore that will pass itself down the line, if it isn't already passing itself down the line, as to how individual interpreters will be handling technology as it shifts and as it changes. So technological development, for me to be able to manage my own business effectively, I've got to be right on top of technological developments. Economic factors. I joined the National Register in May of last year. So I've missed that period from 2011, 2012, when austerity set in following the financial crash of just a few years earlier, and how that austerity has influenced how we're operating today. Perhaps the most obvious example of that as an economic factor is the pressure that was placed on the courts, on the Ministry of Justice, to find ways to save money. And in their attempts to do so in 2011, 2012, the system that operates now is really quite broken in so many different ways. And that's a conversation that I'm having week in, week out with the Ministry of Justice about undoing much of what they've put in place because of the economic impact of the financial crisis from 2008, 2009, 2010. Now, if we think about the impact of that financial crisis then, we've got to really think about the financial crisis of today. And whichever metric you use, however you want to look at what's happening across the globe, this is not just in the UK, the pressure on companies' finances, the pressure on the public sector's finances, the pressure on your finances is going to be immense. So preparing ourselves for the changes and the uncertainty that that may well bring is really important. We have to start thinking about these things now. We know we've gone through incredibly tough times from 2011, 2012, particularly with the courts. What's it going to be like next year? What's it going to be like the year after that? What's it going to be like the year after that? So economic factors, massive influence on minding your own business and managing it. Ecological issues, less so for our particular ecosystem, other than it will have pressures on finance for the public purse. Political influence, hugely important. Last year, we at the National Register received an unequivocal answer from the government, from the Cabinet Office, stating that across the majority of public service sectors, there's not an appetite, there's not a political will for statutory recognition and mandatory deployment of registered and regulated interpreters. Now, that for us is huge political influence in the negative. From our perspective at the National Register, galvanizes us into action for lobbying and for advocacy and for campaigning. From your perspective, what then do you have to do to ensure that your voice can join a louder voice and ensure that you look after yourselves through the impact of this particular political influence? And it's key, it's absolutely key. We have to ensure that there is an appetite for registered and regulated public service interpreters, that there is an appetite for protection of title, that there is an appetite to make it mandatory for the public sector to only engage with those who are registered and regulated, and not ersatz interpreters, not reserve interpreters, not those with a BA in philology or a BA in linguistics that have got no interpreting training. So political influence, hugely important, big factor on how you manage your business. Legal constraints and changes, we're aware of those, and they change constantly around us. And of course then ethical values. I'm absolutely convinced that the core of the Code of Professional Conduct from the National Register, and for those interpreters who are regulated by that code, holding to those ethical values, that is the real protection for the public when they need somebody to interpret on their behalf when facing the public sector. And we have to draw these ethical values to the attention of the agencies and to those in power within the public sector organisations to ensure that they are really aware of what's vitally important when it comes to the ethics of the interpreting function within public services. This, for me, is the absolute bedrock, because our role is there to protect those who cannot speak English when they need somebody who can help them to achieve it. Everything else spills back from there. How we manage our own businesses, how we affect that which we do to ensure there's decent revenue coming through, to ensure it's a quality life, and that you are protected to conduct that which you do, all comes back to these ethical values. We know there's going to be change, we know there's going to be uncertainty. That which will not change are the ethical values that we have from the Code of Professional Conduct and cleaving to that through the National Register. We need to think through the impact, the immediacy, and the importance of all these factors. Financial issues, massively important. The economic factors. Technological development, massively important to stay right on top of. Political influence, highly important. Immediately, we're not going to change that, but we have to keep on lobbying. And know whether these things have got high, medium, or low impact on what we do. So, will a drive for reducing fees from the public sector through agencies have a high impact on you? Yes, of course it will. So therefore, how can you best manage your way to ensure that you get the maximum that you can out of these environmental factors that are happening today that are going to influence how you operate tomorrow? There's a mnemonic which helps us to stay focused on the nature of these tsunamis and waves that are affecting us and creating change and uncertainty. And it's VUICA, V-U-I-C-A. Are we living in a volatile time? I think all of us would say, yes, we are. Are we living in a time of uncertainty across many issues? Absolutely. Are we living in a time of instability? Whichever way you look, we have instability. Is it a time of complexity? Probably more complex than our grandparents had. Is it a time of ambiguity? Yes, where people say one thing and they perhaps mean another. Therefore, language is important. We have to hold people to account on the language that they use. In volatility, we can expect rapid and unpredictable changes. We know we're going through that. In uncertainty, we know there are different possibilities. I think we're pretty clear about that. Through instability, are we anxious and unsure of the current situation? Yes. The current situation that we're standing on, is it going to be the same tomorrow? We just do not know. What with Brexit, what with coronavirus, what with the injections that are being released now as we pray and we hope that these are going to help control and bring back some sense of normality. Is life complex, stable, difficult, many elements? Actually, life is not stable. There are many elements going on. There are many complex elements, but in a situation of instability, uncertainty, and volatility. And do I feel as if I just really don't know what's going on? And that creates that sense of ambiguity. Let me share with you that with so much going on, with so much occurring, with so much that potentially is negative, with so much that might drag me down, it is so easy to feel swamped by all this. So how can I manage my own business and set a course which is going to help me have as good a business life, as good a work life as is possible, given everything else that's going on? And that really comes down to those things which I can manage. What are the things that I can manage through all this? What are the things that I can do which will put me at the top of the pack, that will drive me more effectively? So no matter the storm that's raging, I am ploughing my route along a path where I know I've done the very best that I possibly can. And that really is coming back to what I said at the beginning here. All we can do today, all we will do, is to begin to scratch the surface of some elements. What I'd ask you to do is to think through for yourselves what more you'd like to spend more time on. How do I package myself to make sure that I get seen through social media, through the marketing, through emailing? How do I build a list of people who are important for me to be talking to? How can I ensure that I have the right terms and conditions so that when I'm dealing with an agency, when I'm dealing with a public sector organisation, my anchor bed are my terms and conditions for myself, that they're realistic but fair? How can I ensure that I fully understand that once I've done the work, that I'm ensuring that the invoice has gone in, that I will have done everything possible to ensure that I get paid on time? And if I'm not getting paid on time, how do I chase? How do I most effectively chase for that cash? And how well do I understand the managing of cash, and then understand the profit and loss issues and the balance sheet issues for those private organizations that I'm actually dealing with? So across all of this, what are the things that are important for you to spend more time on? Because once we accept change and uncertainty is a given. Volatility, instability, complexity, ambiguity are with us, and we need to find ways to move forward. It's a little bit like there was the old status quo and it felt wonderful. For those of us who've been involved in this system, from everything that I've heard from people who talk to me about what it was like in 2008, 2009, the old status quo felt good, felt strong. Knowing that there's going to be a new status quo over time, but to get there, it was difficult, it was chaotic, and actually it feels like I'm at the bottom here and it hurts, it really hurts. And what we need are transforming ideas to help us clamber through this and integrate, to work well together, because there is power in togetherness to create a new status quo from which life will be much easier. So that's the ideal that we're working towards, from the old status quo to the new status quo, but it's messy. It's messy, and we have to understand that that's what's going on. So transformation and change, how can we work within this? Well, we need insights. We need to understand that which we need to address. We need to think about our own personal options. What are the things that suit me? How do I want to make things happen which fit with me? It's pointless doing something that you're uncomfortable with. Only do those things where you feel that this is good for you. And then experiment, try them out. See what goes on. So you have your plan, you've prepared, you deliver it, you introduce, you see how it works, you review, and then you experiment again. And this is how we stay focused through a time of change, through a time of uncertainty, where we have insights as to what's going on. We look at the options of what we could possibly do. We attempt to introduce experiment. We prepare it, we launch it. It's in the marketplace, we review what occurs, and we see what I've learned and see what more I can do. That affects how we manage our marketing. It affects how we manage our signature on your email. That's a vital piece of marketing. It speaks every single time you send an email out. Think about LinkedIn sites. Are we all on LinkedIn? If we are on LinkedIn, have we built very large audiences? If we've built a large audience, how often are we addressing them? And do we link up with lots of other LinkedIn opportunities where things are being said, which we can pick up, which we can repeat? So this is all about how we can experiment to market ourselves, as well as experimentation in how we negotiate and deal with agencies and with the public sector. So establish a sense of urgency for yourself. There's a lovely phrase, and that goes something along the lines of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I know this is something I must do. I know that's something I need to address. I know I really want to get round to this. If there isn't a sense of urgency, then all those things will just sit there and not get done. So establish for yourselves a sense of urgency, a sense of these are the things I must do. And it's almost a triage approach where you write a list of everything that you can think of that you want to address. And then you say to yourself, right, which of these are vital? Which of these are important? Actually, which of them are really urgent and need to be lifted straight to the front? So establish a sense of urgency about how you want to handle change and how you want to be part of a transformation to ensure that you're in the best possible position for the future. Review yourself. Decide what you need to do as well. So it's not just about that which you are going to be doing, but also look to yourself. I know there's some amazing CPD going on at the moment. And I personally am delighted whenever we receive notification of it to make sure that it is mentioned on the website, it's mentioned on LinkedIn, It is mentioned in the newsletters that go out. What I'm also struck by is how much CPD there is which it has no charge. So review yourself, decide on what there is that you can do for you to strengthen what you are as a product, and then write your plan. Because if you put down on paper that which you want to do and put timelines against it, chances are you'll do it. If you're just thinking that's something I should get around to, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Which means you've written the plan, then start to act on it, learn from it, take little steps, iterative process, change and amend where you need to. This is not a Stalinist approach to economics. This is you guiding yourself as to what's going to work and what isn't going to work. Recognize there'll be setbacks. My goodness, I'll share with you the setbacks over the last 18 months where we at the National Register thought we were achieving something with certain public sector organisations, and then it steps back. Then we think we're achieving something, and then there's steps back. But stay focused on that which you want to do. Never mind those setbacks, dust yourself down and keep on going. Learn, consolidate, and be encouraged. Very important word, encouraging, especially when you are self-employed and sole trader, because you haven't got a team of people, you haven't got peers around you. So having networks where you can share information, you can share knowledge, you can share learning, you say that which didn't work, this did work, and encourage each other. So important. I know there are closed user groups of interpreters where information is shared, and this is such a good thing, and I absolutely encourage it, and I think it's so valuable for our ecosystem, and through that then ensure your voice is heard, which I think is again really important as part of this transformation and change, because so often the relationships are asymmetrical. My goodness, a large public sector organization, a large profit-driven, dividend-stimulating agency, and then you. So find ways to ensure that your voice is heard. Work alongside those who can amplify that voice. With the National Register, we have access to the All Parliamentary Party Group on modern languages. We work very closely with them, and we will continue to do so and get even closer. We have regular meetings. We push to have the regular meetings with senior management at the Ministry of Justice, at the police, to ensure that those issues which could damage the standards in our ecosystem are addressed. Now, the only way I have the information about the problems that are going on is from you. So you make sure you feed them through. But that's what then gives an amplification of your voice back. Why? Because it's helping to manage your own business. It's making sure that in your ship, you're doing as much as you possibly can to keep stable through all these changes. Does everyone need to be agile? Absolutely. It is essential for us to be agile because things are changing so quickly. The disruption that we've gone through this last year, I would heartily suggest that that is going to be the norm from now on. I can't stress this enough. Be prepared for change and change to continue. There's a management phrase, it's dynamic stability. The stability is this, that things will change. It will be dynamic, it will keep on changing. The only constant will be yourself and your colleagues and how you drive forward. Reframe change as the norm to be embraced. Embrace it. Don't be frightened of change. Many people are. We like things to be as they were. They're not going to be. So embrace change and think, right, what's the opportunity for me through this? Readily embrace it. Stimulate your own changes. Introduce innovation into how you're operating. So act on the gaps, as we've said. Review yourself. What do I need to do? Be prepared for the future needs related to your own CPD within your own language service, other career progression programs. And I would suggest that this is perhaps the genesis of a progression program where we can say, yes, okay, Mike, we want to talk about the packaging of ourselves. I want to talk about social media. I want to talk about email marketing. I want to talk about building a network for myself. I want to talk about how I personally negotiate. I want to talk about my own terms and conditions and how I communicate and work with those terms and conditions and make people pay attention. I want to talk about invoicing. I want to talk about cash collection. I want to talk about understanding how I manage cash flows. And I want to talk about understanding profit and loss and also balance sheet negotiation. So other career progression programs which will enable you to be more successful with the language service specialities that you have. So business planning, marketing, and finance. If everyone moves forward together, success will take care of itself, said Henry Ford. He did run very large plants making motor cars, of course. However, there's a lesson here for us, because it's down to us as well then to share with each other those things which are working and those things which don't work. So understanding finance. Well, everybody thinks cash is just very simple. It's cash in and it's cash out. I've spent a great deal of time working with self-employed, sole traders, and also small and medium-sized enterprises, stressing the difference of different cash flows. There's that which you earn from the work that you are doing, so operating cash flow, that cash that comes in, and my expenditure to fulfill that, to make sure that that is actually working as a positive cash flow for me. Then there's that cash which you have earned, which you've then invested. Are you getting a good enough return from that? Do we spend enough time looking? I'll tell you now, I spend nothing like as much time as I should looking at where the cash that's been earned has actually been placed and as to whether there's any return coming from it. And often I just use it as a bank to fund me when my operating cash flows are not working well for me. I'm not earning enough, I'm spending too much, I'll grab something that I've invested. If you can separate them, you will find over time that your investing cash flows will increase. Now, this is just scratching the surface. And then third, financing cash flows. I have worked with individuals who they've had a real problem finding any sort of operating cash, like many people this last year, as work's been very difficult, whose investing cash flows are non-existent because whatever investments they've had to use to cover themselves as their reserve. So then they are thrust onto borrowing to ensure that they can move forward. So that's financing cash flows. But they treat that as the same as their other cash, and that's really dangerous. Perhaps the worst examples of this is when people are surviving off their credit cards and they're maxed out, and then they're taking payday loans to fund how they operate. The interest rates on those are phenomenal. Now, if you actually break that down, if you look at it in hard numbers, this is what I'm earning from the financing cash flow, this is how much it's costing me to fund it, my goodness, that'll make us change the way we're operating and try to actually get rid of very negative financing cash flow. So this presentation is available for you. This just scratches the surface of understanding cash flows. And the more we understand how to manage these, then they can become friends and helpers. If we don't, then we tend to scramble around and we tend to get very anxious about our cash situation. And if we get very anxious about our cash situation, that's a negative impact on how we operate. So let me please encourage you to think about your cash from an operating cash flow, that which I have earned from working and how much does it cost me to carry out that work. from investing cash flow. Have I got money to invest? Yes, I have. It's invested. What sort of return am I getting from that? If it's not very good, do I need to think about it? And if I've used up my investing cash flow, if my operating cash flow has been so damaged because of this particular year or any year that I'm having to borrow, I'm having to finance, then how much am I paying for that financing? We won't spend much more time on that, but if you want to spend more time, then please let us know, because we could run a whole session on managing our cash more effectively. I would suspect that very few of us operate on a profit and loss account basis. We're working on cash, because there is a difference between profit and cash. Profit's actually a fiction. It's a fictive number. Profit is the number that comes from that which I have invoiced out. So not cash in, but what I've invoiced that's owed to me, and that which I am expecting to pay to cover those invoices. So in a particular month, how much have I invoiced out that I'm expecting to come in? How much am I going to have to pay out to cover that, were I to pay it all out? So it's a fiction, it's a fictive number based on accounting principles. And it kind of shapes up like this. The generation of profit is a result of your invoice sales against the costs, which then creates the profits, which then get distributed. Now, if I was running a privately owned business in our ecosystem, and if it was an agency, then my job is to stimulate as much revenue as I can from the public sector, and to limit how much money I spend and lay out, which is actually very much a very high proportion of the money that they lay out goes to actually the engagement fees. So my job would be to cut those fees as tight as possible. Now, the more we understand how a privately owned agency operates with a fiduciary responsibility to deliver profit and dividends, the better we're prepared in our dealings with them. So their revenues, their cost of goods, what they call a gross margin, less their operating expenses, gives them EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, their operating profit. Any interest has to come off, any tax has to come off, then that's their net income, and then that is what is divided amongst the shareholders. If you want to spend more time understanding finance, understanding profit and loss accounting, again, we could run a whole 2-hour session on this. And then, of course, when they're running a business, they have what's known as a balance sheet. The assets on one side must balance against the liabilities. And this, well, I'm not going to spend any more time on it now, but if some people say, actually, Mike, I want to spend some time on understanding the balance sheet, I want to spend some time on understanding the difference between current assets and fixed assets, between current liabilities and non-current liabilities, for whatever reason, I would be delighted to run an hour or 2-hour session just on understanding the balance sheet for a privately run shareholding business. So let's move on to marketing. Well, there's so many different platforms. So what I've tried to do is to describe them in the simplest of terms. So were I a Twitterer, I would spend time telling people that I am eating cake. Were I spending a lot of time on Facebook, I'd say, oh, look, I like eating cake. Were I wanting to get the best out of YouTube, I would like to show you how I like to eat cake. Were I spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, I would like to show you what my skills are, what my experience is, what my competencies are, including eating a cake. On Instagram, I just want a really nice picture. That's all, just a picture of me eating cake. And if I'm a blogger, I want to share an experience with you. I want to talk about it to you. Now, which of these social platforms will you find useful? If you're somebody that likes to write out short messages, then Twitter would work brilliantly. But if you haven't built an audience, that would be a bit like shouting in the middle of a forest and there's nobody to hear you. So if you like sending out simple messages, you have to make sure that you build an audience of people who want to hear that which you want to say. I personally am very discomforted by Twitter. I think that too many people hide behind it and it can end up in a slanging match between people. So both on a personal basis and also on a professional basis, I tend to steer clear of Twittering. Facebook. Do I like to share with people that which is important to me? Well, there are two audiences, aren't there? There's the private, which is the family and friends, and then there's the public. Is there some benefit in me sharing the fact that I like eating cake to a wider audience? Well, yes, there is. You need to build the audience. It's no good just sending the message out. You've also got to build you've got to create the desire from others to want to come and look at that which you're saying. And of course, one of the other joys of Facebook is the closed user groups where people can really share what's going on for them. And that, I think, is superb. I think it's very, very important. YouTube, this is how I eat cake. Have you done something? Can you say something which is going to be captured on video that's going to be of value and of interest? I think yes. I personally don't use YouTube enough. We don't use it enough for the National Register. We've only this last year had one YouTube posting. I fully intend for the National Register to do more. I think it would be wonderful if more and more professional, regulated and registered public service interpreters videoed themselves and shared that on YouTube and then help build audience. You'd certainly get my commitment to be liking and sharing to help you build and get messages out. LinkedIn. My skills include eating cake. Well, it's business. We're talking about managing our own businesses here. This has to be, from my perspective, the most powerful marketing tool that there is. When it comes to investment, the amount of money you have to spend is minimal. It's time. You have to spend time. And the way to spend time is to keep on building an audience, and posting and posting. And the more you post, the more the audience will grow. It's self-perpetuating. My personal LinkedIn is now at over 17,000 connections. When I started this role, I had only about 13,000. So across the globe, language service professionals have come to look at what I'm saying, and I've reached out to them. We've grown it tremendously. And we've also doubled the number of LinkedIn followers for the National Register's own site. And many of you will know that we have accelerated the number of posts that we push out. Every time you like that post, you're exposing yourself to a bigger, wider audience. Every time you post something on LinkedIn and we see it and then we share it, it's getting seen by a much wider audience. So let me encourage you, a very simple thing to start to do is to build your own LinkedIn page, be happy with your own LinkedIn page, put posts out, let it be known among certain people that you are posting, get them to like and share, and then you'll start to get to be seen by a much wider audience. That can only be good for you. Instagram, here's a classic pic of the cake I eat. I'm not sure the value that has as far as managing your business is concerned, but a blogger, here's my cake eating experience, writing 200 words, 250 words on a subject to do with our language ecosystem. I think that's got real value. Actually, the blogging that I tend to do is either on LinkedIn or on the National Register's own website. From your perspective, if you want to get seen, you want to get noticed, if you want to write pieces for the website, then we would be delighted to post them for you and to push them out through LinkedIn. And this is the way you personally improve the shape of your own ship through these changes that are going on, through the tsunami that's going on around us, the waves crashing. I've got a picture of George Clooney in a trawler, but we're not going to let the trawler sink. We're going to power through these waves because what you're doing is right, good and proper. You're improving that which you are through your CPD, through your learning, through improving how you present yourself. You're improving your social media marketing, so you're getting seen, you're getting spotted even through these tsunamis. And you're going to improve how you manage your cash as well. All of these things will add up to a stronger business that you are running for yourselves. Then, of course, there's Pinterest. Here's my recipe for the cake, which again is nothing other than a developed Instagram. My own personal suggestion, really work hard with LinkedIn, do some great work on Facebook, and if you can get some video going, then you can make YouTube work for you as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this next slide, but you'll have copies of it because this presentation is available. However, it simply says, get yourself out there and network. Find ways to use e-commerce effectively. Now, this could be in terms of collecting cash, chasing money. It could be ways of setting up with people for payment to pay you direct. So that it's much easier way for you to earn your cash. Create your own niche website, quite possible, for not too big an investment. And then persuade others to see that which you are doing and to like and share that which you do. Authority websites, by this we're talking the National Register, possibly the Chartered Institute, possibly with AIT. You have a piece, you send it to Irina and the team want to put it up for you on your behalf. Why not? You as a product, think of yourself in that way. How much CPD have I done? What skills have I sharpened up? What is there that I want to tell people about? Then use social media to do that. And that's selling yourself as a service. It takes time. One of the toughest things to do is to build the audience. And the way to do that is to link up with others, push things out through other people, and then other people will come to look at you, and then they will want to watch you more often. Won't spend too much time on that. My suggestion would be that this would be something which we could definitely, just this slide, we could spend a good 2-hour session on to talk about our own social media marketing. Create a potential audience for exposure to whatever you're going to say. Interact on a regular basis with not just your own content, but engage with others who will then engage with you. Influence others by that which you say. So have opinions, have behaviors that you can relate outward. Don't just like, make a comment. And then when you feel stronger, actually post a longer piece. That will then have a greater impact. And through that impact, you will raise your own standing. And by raising your own standing, you will be advocating not just for yourself, but for all those who are committed to professionalism in language services in the public arena. When it comes to negotiation, this again is a subject that we could spend a great deal of time on. But suffice it to say, I see negotiations a journey. And it's not a journey to beat the other within the negotiation, which I know so many within our ecosystem believe that they must work that way and do work that way because they've been given the right to do so. Well, part of the job of the advocacy of the National Register is to work with the public sector organisations themselves and to ensure that they are policing the agencies more effectively. Still a long way to go, but that's one of our key platforms. But from your point of view, when it comes to a successful negotiation, first thing you have to do is know your own worth. And I know this is difficult. when money's tight, when there aren't that many jobs around, and if you are offered an engagement at a fee which is unacceptable, but you can't see anything else, then it's grab at it. Well, make sure that you've at least stressed your value and your worth. The fact that you're level 6, the fact that you've got 3 degrees, the fact that you've got 600 hours experience just in the last 2 years, 3 years, the fact that you've been on the National Register for 11 years, the fact that you have worked consistently at a high level for the public sector, but only on that basis will I take it. I'm not a level 2 who's scrabbling around that can hardly do the job. Make sure you know your own worth, both in terms of that which you are delivering, and in an ideal world, that way you would walk away, if you could, from the work. But as I say, I know that's hard. If it's the only game in town, then we have to grab at it. But make sure you communicate your worth. Actually, listen to what the others want. It cannot be that all they want is the cheapest possible. If it is, well, I would let your regulator know. Because the regulator cannot get involved. It's not in our mandate on a one-on-one negotiation. That's not part of our mandate. We're not a union. But what the regulator is there to defend standards. And if those standards are being eroded because the public sector and because agencies are saying it's only about the money, it's only about the money, it's not about the quality, then yes, you can trigger the regulator, and we can help you with that asymmetrical balance, your voice against their voice. Listen to what the others want, and if it's only about money, please let me know. Match your worth to their needs, understand what's non-negotiable. If somebody says this is not going to change tomorrow, okay, all right, then what can be changed? And then agree how to move forward and make sure that agreement is logged. So people say, well, that's not what I said. So whatever is agreed, make sure it is written down in some form of confirmation. Now, again, we could spend a good 2 hours picking this apart and exploring ways to really handle each one of those areas. But successful negotiation, where we are heading, where our world is moving to, it's going to become more and more important. It's not going to be, but this is the fee that was set for the next 12 months or for the next 2 years. It's going to be a lot less like that, a lot less like that. And we need to, each of us, get stronger in successful negotiation. Behavioral economic strategist, Eric Vermeulen, really like his work. If you get the chance to dig out, which you can find through Google, much of his papers, many of his papers, and I would heartily recommend a good read. One of my favourite quotes of his: "We change behaviour, others' behaviour, by framing what we want them to do into something that is relevant to them." Why would they change their behaviour? Only because it's of value to them. Not because it's a good thing to do, but because it's of value to them. So underpinning any negotiation, put yourself in the other person's shoes and think about what they want, and then frame what you want the way that it would benefit them. Know your own skills and experience. Plan what you need to do. Improve your processes and activities. Focus on managing the cash more effectively. Think about profit and loss. Understand balance sheets. Market yourselves. Really important. Keep at it. Don't become disheartened. Learn lessons and share, and stand your ground. You're valuable. You're important. The role that you do is vital. You help protect the public, and that has to be and should be respected. And we will do everything we can to ensure, from the National Register's point of view, that is maintained and indeed developed. And I know it's tough in today's situation, but you have that as a commitment from the National Register. Remember this is a quote from Charles Handy, and again, I would heartily recommend anything that you wish to explore from Charles Handy. He's a glorious, glorious fellow. Those that survive longest are the ones that work out what's unique. Not about money, it's not about growth, but your excellence, your respect for others, your ability to make people happy, your ability to hold to your ethical centre. And Charles Handy, of course, called it soul. So managing your own business, best possible practice. I hope you've taken something from this, which you can think, yes, I'd like to actually spend more time on. And I hope perhaps you've taken something from this where you can begin to make some immediate changes. I'll give you one immediate change. For those of you who are registrants, you know that there is a NERC logo for those who are registered. You will find it in the interpreter room on the website. Take it, use it, drop it on your signature, on your emails, put it on your LinkedIn site, because that's flagging up to everybody through these troubled times that you believe it's worthwhile investing in protecting ethics. Plus, it shows that you've got the right qualifications, it shows you've got the right experience and the right clearances to actually call yourself a registered public service interpreter. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to drop this down now, stop sharing that, and hopefully you can see me now rather than that, and I should be back. Yes?
Yes.